Sales, pressure, like felt by the buyer first. If you can't do that, then try to add in value. And if you're really, really stuck, then work on that urgency using price as a leverage.
This isn't your average revenue podcast. It's Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist, powered by Comsor. And it's your new work bestie. Through conversations with other women in the revenue space, Ashley and Katrina get candid about their unique experiences, help women tackle challenges in the workplace, and uncover ways to grow as revenue pros. Maybe you'll learn a little, cry a little, laugh a little, have an epiphany, or at the very least, get a killer playlist to listen to while you work. Being a woman in this industry is wild. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. Today, we'll be joined by Leslie Venetz, founder of Sales Team Builder. Leslie, thank you for joining us.
I am so jazzed to be here. Can't wait.
We're so excited you're here. And first, I want to read your bio really quickly so everyone knows about your many wonderful and amazing accomplishments. So Leslie is a very experienced sales leader. She's been the head of sales 3 times and is constantly sharing her expertise on new business development ideas and sales leadership. And not shockingly, is a LinkedIn top sales voice of 2023. She's spent 15 years in C-suite enterprise selling and has opened many doors at many massive logos like AT&T, Kraft Heinz, Walmart, ExxonMobil, JP Morgan. The list goes on and on and on. She's worked at companies of all different shapes and sizes. She's been employee number 1 at startups, repping teams from 0 to over 400K in revenue in under 9 months, by the way. She successfully led SDR teams, BDRs, SIRs, AE, CS, you name it. And so I think it's safe to say that when it comes to sales, she's done it all. And today she's specifically joining us to chat about how to talk with prospects, not at them, the art of negotiation, which we'll get into, and of course, her experience as a woman in revenue. Leslie, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. I can't wait to dig in. You nailed it on the bio.
Love it.
Awesome. As you all know by now, hopefully, our podcast has a bit of a musical twist to it. The Infinite Revenue Playlist was inspired by the concept of having a walk-up song, since as sellers and other revenue-related roles, we're often compared to athletes. The walk-up song is something that pumps you up before you step out onto the field or into the field to play, or before you walk in and crush your day. So with all of that in mind, Leslie, what is your walk-up song?
This was such an easy choice for me. It is Sister Nancy Bomb Bomb, which is a song that's been around forever and people have definitely at least heard it sampled because it's sampled all over the place. But there's a version of it from a movie called Belly that is like, it hits when the beat drops. It gets you riled up. It gets ready to get on the phone and smash some calls. So that is absolutely my revenue, my sales, my business walk-up song.
Is it the beat or are there any specific lyrics that relate?
I mean, the entire song is about like a woman in business having ambition. So the entire song slaps, but like when the beat drops, it makes you want to like really just do the dang thing.
Do the dang thing. Okay. Love that.
When you originally sent that over, I didn't know what the song was, but when I listened to it, I was like, all right, I've heard this song a million times. It's one of everyone knows it, but you might not know the title.
It gets sampled all the time. I mean, it's good. It's a good one. Look it up, people.
Well, it's now on the playlist. So if anyone wants to listen to it, you can look up Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist on Spotify and you'll find Leslie's song there.
And others.
And many others. Yeah.
Everyone's walk-up song.
Should we dive into it? I know there's 100 questions that we want to ask you because we're really selfishly very excited that you're here. But I know that you are such a huge proponent of saying that people should talk with their prospects, not at them. And I don't think a lot of salespeople actually know the difference. So I kind of want to start from the very beginning and explain like, what is the difference between talking at a prospect and talking with them? And how can we avoid it in the future?
For sure. And that entire strapline came by accident. I have a lot of conversations in the comments on LinkedIn Like I batch create and then schedule 80+% of my content so that I can really chat with people in the comments. And I replied to somebody's comment and I typed that out in my reply and they wrote back, "Oh my gosh, like that is profound. That should be your new strapline for your business." And I thought,
there you go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think the basis of it is something that all of us can understand because we all know what it feels like to be talked at. Like we know that feeling where you don't feel like you're being listened to. Maybe they're hearing you, but then just carrying on with whatever they wanted to say anyway. And it's very, the talking at piece, I think, in the context of sales, very much centers the seller. And we've all seen those, surely LinkedIn messages, but probably emails as well. That's like, "Hi, I'm Leslie, the blah, 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 and we do, and I want our product." And frankly, most historical sales messaging has had that like very seller-centric twist on it. And it's no wonder that people fear us and don't want to hear from us because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be spoken to that way. And it doesn't feel good to get messages that are just like not anything about you, that show clearly that the person sending them just doesn't really care about you. So why not go the opposite direction? And why not have a conversation with people? And even if it's one-sided in the context of cold outreach, like making it about them instead of about us. But certainly when we think about conversations on social or conversations through the buying process, making sure that it is a conversation. So that is, where that philosophy came from.
So what are ways that we can check ourselves and realize like, oop, I'm talking at someone? Like, what are those little things that we can identify to see that we're doing that?
For sure. I think one of the really easy routes, and then I'll suggest some free options, but one of the really easy ways is with tech. Like we have so many amazing tools at our disposal when we think like call recording AI that tells us how much we've been talking for, or tools like a Reggie or a Lavender that tells us what the U to I ratio is in our emails. So if you have the ability to invest in some tech for yourself or your team, it frankly does help. But my sort of forever sense check, which is very free, is to write the email however you would write the email. Like no reason to give ourselves writer's block, just type it out and then go back and look at it and think, how would it feel if I received this email? And most of the time, even when I do that, as somebody that professionally writes email copy, I'm like, that's first draft, wasn't it? Let me try again.
That's what's so great about email versus like a conversation face to face, because you can check yourself. Any advice for when you're talking to somebody to not do it in the moment? Because I know how I have done that, but it's hard.
I think we've all been there at some point in our careers.
It is hard. And I mean, so the way I think about it, Ashley, is that like all things, it's a muscle that you have to like flex and work, right? And so often I'll hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm just bad at time management," or I don't have focus, or "I'm bad at listening." It's like you're not default bad at it. You're just not practicing the skill. And I think we forget that they are skills. And we sort of feel like they're maybe innate and you either have the thing or you don't have the thing. And so when we think about the talking with versus talking at, the most foundational skill there is active listening. And let's all just take a moment to acknowledge that active listening, it's a skill, it's a craft, it is difficult, it is something that absolutely takes practice. So I have a framework that I use for active listening. It's something I teach in my, like training consulting gigs. But the most important piece, it's a 4R framework. The most important piece is the second part, which is resist. Because resist is like not just resisting the temptation to interrupt, but it's resisting the temptation to like rent space in our head to the thing that we're going to say next. It is like resisting the temptation to assume that you know what they're trying to share with you, which is especially hard in sales because we've probably heard that same challenge or opportunity or pain point how many times before. And you like, it's not even that you want to sell, you're excited because you think you have something to help them. So you want to like jump in, but you're jumping in too soon. Or like for me, the one I struggle with the most is probably resisting the temptation to like be relatable and share my story because I am immediately putting the spotlight on me and taking it off of them. And I'm like not doing it to, it's just like it's just the way that we have all sort of been socialized or maybe even trained in sales, but it creates talking at, and it's, something that we need to practice moving away from, but it takes work.
Not to take the spotlight off of you and make it support me, but no, this situation makes me think about some reps that I've recently trained. And I definitely did this when I first became an account executive. I think we're so excited to share the knowledge we have on the industry and the product and the research we did on them. That's so easy to like talk. Or when all of a sudden the prospect/customer asks a question that kind of deviates you from your original plan, you start thinking, you're like, do I answer this or do I keep going on my really amazing pitch and keep going on? And a lot of times in the beginning, I see reps, they're like, oh, that's a great question. We'll get to that. And then you just keep talking. I'm like, you had such a great opportunity to listen to what they said, respond to it in real time, and make a point of like, oh, you need X, Y, and Z. This is how I can help, or this is what we can do for you. Except they, as you said, talk at them, and they don't listen and talk with the prospect. And I think that is like very common, typical mistake in the beginning. Not to make it about me, No,
but I think like sellers, like we have such a bad reputation, but having listened like both of you to like thousands of sales calls, it's so rarely that a call goes badly because somebody is trying to like hard sell. And it's so much more likely that the call goes badly because they are too excited or trying to help, but like helping in the wrong ways, offering the wrong solutions because they haven't listened, or like just so eager that they don't stop and like take that moment to be like, wait, sorry, tell me more about that. Why do you ask? Or what does that mean for you? I think it's maybe a bit counterintuitive to folks that what is going to make them bad at selling or what's going to cost them deals is actually being like too excited and too eager to help. And that, instead of listening and going deeper and getting curious, they're going to just keep moving forward.
The best practice that I know for doing this is parenting. Because you can't just go off and talk about yourself when your kid is asking you a question that may not even make any sense. You've got to actually be like, what do you mean? What?
So what you're saying is treat
everybody have a baby.
Or your child.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I mean, but talk about masters of asking questions. Why? What's that? Why?
True.
It's simple, but if salespeople did more of just like, tell me more, help me understand. Why do you say that? What makes you ask that? Like just those very simple questions that are the kind of questions that children, when they haven't been taught to not be so curious yet, lead with.
I wish we didn't teach kids to not be curious. It's such a sad sentence. Side note. Curiosity, we've talked about this, Katrina and I have, with a lot of people recently. Curiosity is such an important skill. And I remember putting curiosity as a sales skill on my LinkedIn, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And it being like, oh my gosh, should I put this on here? Because people are going to think I'm crazy. This is not the way people talk. And now it's like part of the whole thing. But at the time, that was a scary thing for me to put on my LinkedIn because I was afraid that people were going to be like, what do you mean? No, you mean like closing skills, right? Like those are the important things, right? But curiosity.
Wow. You're so right, though, that talking about having skill sets like curiosity, empathy, listening, those in the very recent past were things that could lose you a job because you wouldn't be seen as a hunter, ninja, warrior wizard, that it was going to go out and kill deals.
Yep. I was afraid that someone that was looking at my resume would see that and think that I wasn't a good salesperson, which is so funny looking back now.
Yeah.
That's what makes us good salespeople.
Facts.
100%. Because if you can listen and be curious about the person you're selling to and ask them questions about them that are actually relevant, this is a psychological thing. A lot of, psychologists say that if you're having a conversation with someone, you ask them all about them, and you ask them about, hey, what do you like? What do you do? And you never say anything about yourself. Most of the time, that person's going to walk away and think it was an amazing conversation because they talked about themselves. Everyone likes to talk about themselves, whether they admit it or not. It's the same thing in the sales process, just in a professional setting. That's why asking about them, what they want, what they like, what they want to do is so important if you actually want to build a connection and sell that deal at the end of the day. I was going to say one last thing that I do want to talk about on the topic of speaking with prospects is, people do love concrete data and facts and evidence. And I'm curious if you have any measurable outcomes or metrics from previous roles, previous companies of what you see when people actually start to deploy speaking with prospects rather than at them.
Yeah, there's so much data on this. Like, we don't even need to rely on me and what I've done or like anecdotal stories. Like the data is firm. When you meet people where they are at, and maybe this is something as simple as writing copy in a way that's digestible for them, shorter, simpler sentences, optimized for mobile at maybe like 5th grade reading level, they're more likely to read it and consume it because you're making it easier for them. When you index on creating communication that you are confident is valuable and relevant, you see open rates and reply rates and click-through rates. You see those all skyrocket. But I do think that you bring up a really important point, because something I'm seeing folks really struggle with right now is personalization, because they are being told they need to personalize, and they're doing it. Technically, they are doing it, but their personalization looks like, I see that you're the founder at Sales Team Builder. And I'm like, do you? It's literally the first thing on my LinkedIn. So, wow, deep research. Or like, it's just like, it's nonsense. Like, I went to college, you went to college. How's the weather in Chicago? It is so superficial that it becomes disingenuous. And it becomes the new form of like icky salesy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would rather just get an email where somebody's like, I want to sell you this thing because I assume you have this problem. Than being like, hi, Leslie, I see you're the founder at Sales Team Builder, and I'm so impressed with what you've done in your industry. And P.S., your review from Karen Sinette's amazing. I'm like, bud, this email has nothing to do with that review or this job. Like, it's so disingenuous. But it technically is personalization, right? So I think that one of the big pieces of talking with instead of at, when you are trying to personalize and do it in a way that is meaningful, is to really focus on, is it relevant? So is the piece of personalization that I'm using relevant to the thing I'm going to say next? And if it's like, you went to college, I also went to college, buy my thing, that is not relevant. And is it valuable? Like, think about it from the eyes of your prospect. And if I'm looking at the preview pane of an email and it says, like podcast review is the subject line, and I'm like, I like podcasts and I leave reviews, like that's relevant. And then the first sentence is, I hope this email finds you well, or how's the weather in Chicago? And that's the entire preview. The probability that I'm going to open the email just plummeted.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up the college thing, because I can send you a screenshot of 2 weeks ago of me sending to my team saying, I swear to God, if someone sends me another, saw you went to TCU, go Frogs, I'm going to lose it. Because that is not personalization. Like, no shit, I went to TCU. It's displayed to everyone, all of my social media. And so we always say, this goes back to exactly what you said, personalization for the sake of personalization doesn't work. It really truly has to be relevant both to what you're selling or talking about and to that person, right? They have to care. So I could not agree more with everything you just said.
We have a C-level executive here at my company, and he's from Australia, and he gets so much outreach that's like, "G'day, mate. See, you're from Australia," and he's like, "That's it's an entire country. Like, that's not personalization. It may seem like that to you because he's the only Australian that you are trying to reach out to, but that's not personalization at all."
And the worst part, though, is that that rep like wrote that email and then turned to the person sitting next to them and was like, I just nailed this one.
Nailed it. Yeah. No. Don't do that.
Which isn't to say don't be creative. Like, be creative, be playful, be silly, but be relevant to them.
100%.
Make it matter to them.
Is there any recent email outreach to you that's memorable, that was personalized, that you're like, that was pretty good, I'll respond?
Yeah, the ones that I am almost certain to open, say I found you on TikTok. Because I don't use my name on TikTok. So to find me on TikTok, they had to at least go, because it's at Sales Tips Talk, right? It's not Leslie Venetz. So
yeah,
they had to go at least 2 layers deep and then migrate over to either find my email, which I also don't list there, or find me on LinkedIn. So that's a pretty surefire way. I'm also a sucker for a cold text outreach.
Ooh.
Interesting.
My voicemail even says it. Do not leave a voicemail. I will not check it. But you are welcome to text me at this number. So that then it's centering me in the message. Clearly my TikTok is important to me. I spent a boatload of time building it. So your message, you're talking about something that's important to me. And then you're pulling forward a topic on TikTok, like getting emails or conversational intelligence or whatever it is, and pulling that into your cold outreach. Or you are making it about me by meeting me on the exact channel, text approach that I have asked you to communicate with me on. So those are pretty good ones. I'm working with a company right now. I'm an equity advisor for them. They're still in stealth, but they are doing some scraping of data for personalized openers. It's amazing. We were doing some tests a couple of weeks ago, and the person is reaching, it's a media, marketing media company is the seller. And it's scraped for the prospect that they make TikToks about dogs.
Oh.
And the subject line it generated was pet all the dogs.
I love that.
And then the email was I see you also love dogs. Oh, and it had a dog emoji in the, it put a dog emoji in the subject line. And it was I see you also love TikTok and love dog, and went on. But I was oh, I would absolutely read that.
I would read any email
about
that starts
dogs.
With pet all the dogs.
Yeah, correct. And I've been kind of trying some of that too, because I now, for the first time ever in my entire career, can be completely unhinged in my outbound because I don't have a boss or there's nobody telling me I can't test stuff. So I have started sending some truly unhinged outbound connect messages on LinkedIn, and I'm getting crazy accept rates.
I feel I need to see some of these
too. Screenshots, please.
I know I need to start sharing some. So I did a test because always be testing. It's the mantra of salespeople. And so I did a test that was a group where I used an AI generated opener. Bad. So bad. Bad. I'm talking I didn't check since I got back from vacation, but I checked right before I left, which would have been almost 5 weeks after I sent them. And it was an 11.5% accept rate. Bad.
That was pretty
But
bad.
all of the AI generated openers were like, as a B2B sales professional with 15 years of experience, I assume you're good at generating revenue. But I had to test it. Like, I need like 10 clients a year, and my TAM is anybody who's bad at sales, which is almost everybody. Well, not bad, but could be better. Could use some help. And then the middle third that I tested was using Humantic. Have you guys played with Humantic yet?
I haven't.
It's so fun. They use disc and ocean personality profiles to predict how a person wants to be communicated with. So It's like, I don't think it's quite there yet, but it's like the next level of personalization, where you're not just personalizing the valuable, relevant messaging, but based on personality insights, you're like meeting them where they're at in terms of length of email. Do they like bullet points or not? Do they want something that says like, howdy, Ashley? Or do they want just like, hi, Katrina? It's so fascinating. So I did a third where it was a really, really niche down ICP. So it was the same message, only changed for personality. Those had above average open rates. So that was so fun. And then I sent a third group that was like just not templatized at all. I just wrote whatever I wanted. And those had like 80 something % accept rates.
I really hope someone that received some of the AI messages from you see this and they're like, oh, that explains it. And they reach out and they let you know.
That's why it was so bad. It was honestly hard to send them. Like, I was kind of cringing, but I was like, you can't run a test if you don't do the test, Leslie.
I appreciate the commitment to that, because I've always fought. Like, I remember times where I have fought my bosses on doing tests because I was like, but I know this is stupid. So not to make it about me, but
it was stupid. And you're right. You were right. You were right to judge them, and you were right to say no. I've been the person that tested now, and we can use this experience and run with it. But I think these AI tools are incredible. Like, I am an equity advisor for a couple of companies that use AI and particularly Gen AI. And I think it's so powerful, but I also think it can be just like hugely, hugely detrimental. Mm-hmm. And so this was a new tool that I wanted to test. Like, there's a ton of tools popping up that are making these claims about personalized call openers, personalized email messages, whatever. And almost all of them give the same exact type of message, that it is technically personalized, but
it's irrelevant.
Yeah, it is not. It is deeply, I mean, I would have probably blocked me if I would have sent it to me. Like, that was that bad. I should let. Can you see if people block? No, you probably can't unless you.
I don't know if you can see that. I don't think
I'll report back.
Well, we're gonna pivot a little bit here, because we've heard that you could argue with a stop sign. So we want to dig into not necessarily arguing, but kind of the art of negotiation and rebuttals in sales, because that's obviously a big portion of closing a deal. And we know you love a good negotiation rebuttal, even if it's with a stop sign. So I guess the ultimate question is, like, how can we negotiate in our sales conversations and come out with a win-win outcome, so to speak?
Yeah.
Very broad question.
Yes. No. It's a good and important question. I would say this is an aside, total rabbit hole, but I would say one of the most interesting things that I've learned from being a content creator is how many of the things I say are not real. They're just not things that any other person says. I posted that one, like, or I could argue with a stop sign, and everybody on LinkedIn was like, no, that's not a thing. No, nobody else does that. No, we've never heard that before. And I Googled it thinking, well, at least Google will be like, this is a blah, blah. No, it's not a thing. It's not a saying for any place outside.
It is now.
Did you find like, you know how some people think Berenstain Bears was Berenstein Bears? Yes. And like, did you find something like that where that's a thing in another universe and it just somehow blipped over to you?
I have
and all proof is gone.
I have like Shaq was a genie in a movie.
I was in that universe with you. I don't understand.
I also don't understand. I don't understand why I say so many weird things, but they're memorable. We're going to make it a thing, like fetch.
Love it.
Just run with it, please, folks. But okay, art of negotiation. So first off, if folks have not read Never Split the Difference, like go get it, read it, listen to it, however it's most accessible to you. I've read it twice. Art of Negotiation is the name of Chris Voss's masterclass. The masterclass is also fire. But he also has a ton of free content on YouTube. So if anybody is looking to just level up their communication game, go do those things. Learn from a master. And I would say on LinkedIn, the person that probably most closely replicates Chris' style is Josh Braun, which I'm assuming most people are familiar with. So my take, and I love that you said win-win. My take is that negotiation should be a win-win. And I see you both vigorously nodding your heads, but sort of, like Ashley, you were sharing 5 years ago, like you were worried about putting curious on your profile. Like until very recently, that was not like that wasn't what people thought. People were like, we go in negotiation, we're going to win. We're going to, like, those people are going to lose. We're going to get the best deal. So that's kind of a new way of thinking about negotiation and selling, is that the outcome should be a true partnership. Mm-hmm. And that requires that win-win outcome. So the very easy response to this is that it has to be rooted in deep understanding. So we have to get curious, and the only way to get curious is to ask a ton of questions and then actively listen.
Yeah, and I think we're not all taught how to negotiate for a win-win outcome. I think that's why we wanted to bring this up. And of course, like the active listening will help you really understand what they're trying to achieve and where the push and pull can come in. But I also think like a lot of salespeople are trying to grasp at like, what's the biggest, most amount of money that I can walk away from? And so they kind of forget about the win-win aspect. And I think they end up kind of alienating the prospect throughout the conversations.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think like there's something to pricing integrity in there. I would say actually the first thing that popped into my head is that maybe the biggest failing of folks when it comes to negotiation is that they think they're negotiating, but actually what they're doing is using like price drops to create false urgency to get somebody to operate on their timeline versus having gone through the effort and the work of identifying the timeline that the prospect has based on their needs and deliverables and whatever it is. So maybe taking a step back, like the art of negotiation is first realizing that there's a difference between sales pressure and urgency. And urgency is always going to be that external force that you put on your prospect to get them to act on your timeline. And sales pressure is always going to be something felt from within the prospect. And the surest way to build sales pressure to make them want to act swiftly is to help them understand why acting now is better than acting later. Like we're all procrastinators. Full stop. 100% of people have a bit of that procrastination in them. So a huge part of before we even get to negotiation is saying, okay, Katrina, like, why are you thinking about buying this? Like, what happens if you don't buy it? Like, isn't that bad? Do we have a real reason to be selling you this? Like, what happens if you don't have it rolled out by X date? Okay, to get it rolled out by X date, you need 6 months of working on it. Okay, to have that 6 months, it takes us on average 48 days to on. So like you're walking them back, and it's kind of like creating a mutual action plan, but without all the like seller-centric, like you need to agree to this deadline and sign here, and here's the like, right? Like it's more of a collaborative conversation where we are co-creating the timeline that if you don't meet, there's going to be some negative repercussions for you, the buyer. And then that creates the sales pressure, right? Like that's a natural emotion that you want to move quickly. And so if you find yourself in the negotiating seat and you realize that you have not appropriately built sales pressure, let's be honest, it's going to happen. Happens to me. It's going to happen to the best of sellers. I would still encourage you in that negotiation to always see what else you can uncover. Like still dig into the curiosity, the understanding, to understand where you can build value into the agreement. So maybe it's an extra seat, maybe it's like 13 months for the price of 12. Maybe it's whatever. Figure out where you can bring value in first before offering a discount. Like the very, very last thing I think you should ever do is cave on money. And I'm not going to say never do that. I sold to chief procurement officers for 4 years. Sometimes you give some points away, but that should be like the very last thing you do. Like sales pressure, like felt by the buyer first. If you can't do that, then try to add in value. And if you're really, really stuck, then work on, that urgency using price as a leverage.
It's interesting that you say that the discount should be not necessarily the last resort, but should be the last thing that you layer on. Because now that I'm on the buying side of tools, I have found recently that in my first conversation with people, like, and we can layer on a 20% discount. I'm like, whoa.
Without you even having asked, probably.
Exactly. And I'm like, you understood all your cards. I was fine with the price, but you just told me that I could automatically get a 20% discount. Now I know I could probably push it even more, So it's interesting when you're sitting on the other side seeing that.
I think that's really good insight. And I also feel like I am almost always in very competitive deals and I know exactly who the competitor is. So some of my real talk, I've done that when I know that the competitor is in the room and they're going to come in at this price and I know how they are trying to undercut me on price and it's a preemptive thing, but I'm actually not even sorry about it at this point, just because if I can uncover that other person's in the room and that's how they've been trying to win, it's a coping mechanism right now, depending on the tool. I've also worked in a situation where I literally never discounted ever, but I think that there are some nuances to what's your competitive landscape look like? What's the recession, the looming recession with air quotes doing? And if I'm losing deals because my price is immediately getting me out of the room before I even get to have that conversation, then your people that are selling to you may be trying to save themselves in some ways. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying that you're probably seeing that because of the world that we're living in right now.
But I think there's a bridge between what the two of you are seeing, which is don't just word vomit out a discount. Not that either of you are advocating for that, but also don't be like, I'm never going to, right? There's a balance. And the question is, what are the most important decision-making factors for you? And almost always one of them is going to be cost, right? And anytime that you hear somebody that says money isn't an issue, that is the biggest of all the red flags. So anybody that's
not real.
Yeah. Anybody that says money isn't an issue here will spend whatever it takes is lying to you. And they probably don't even have check signer ability, but that's another rant. But in this situation, identifying what their decision-making criteria are. And then when they share with you that budget is a decision-making criteria, understanding where that lives on the hierarchy, because maybe it is one of their 5, but it's number 5. Maybe having access to this function is number 1. And you know that you have that and your competitor doesn't. Then okay, let me see how it goes. But maybe they're it is budget. Our CFO already caught, we're doing zero-based budgeting, our CFO, right? Then you're okay, I know that I need to be hyper competitive out of the gates. And that doesn't mean you're not going to still focus on what are your needs? What are your deliverables? You're still going to do that. You might just rank those things in a slightly different order of importance, which goes back to listening and centering your buyer and what they need in the conversation.
If there's one thing anyone's taking away from this episode, it's listen.
Yes. Listen and be curious. Do we really only have 5 minutes?
And we did start a little late because I forgot to put the link in the calendar.
I was just like, oh my gosh, we normally
selfishly, I really want to talk about being a woman in revenue stuff. So if we can pivot, because
that's where I was going to
Leslie, we have seen so many fiery, amazing, witty responses from you to people on TikTok, on LinkedIn. And like, I admire you because I think you call people out in a really intelligent way. And it's something that I wish I could do, but I'm too scared to do. And that's why I really want to talk about this with you, because I think you're a really good role model for other women in revenue to look up to. So let's get into it. You know, something that you talk about a lot is that a lot of reports show that men think they're allies of women in the workplace, but women disagree. And I'm curious from your perspective, all the research and all the work that you've done, like why you think that is and how we can change this narrative.
Yeah, that was some data that was recently published by HBR, and it was shocking. The gap between women who feel like they have male allies and men who think they are being allies to that same group. I mean, the gap was like 25 to 40%, depending on the seniority level of the men. So here's the bitch of it. It's like, it's not my job.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so frustrating. And I think part of what happened in my 30s was I just got so sick of repeatedly asking for just the same level of respect, the same opportunities, and that like level of being fed up happened to align with me being at a point in my career where I had like enough seniority. I sit on a lot of layers of privilege, like things aligned where I got to a point where I felt safe. The safety piece was a huge piece. And I still hold my tongue a lot. Like there's a lot of stuff that I want to say that I still don't feel safe saying. So don't, like, people listening to this, don't feel like you, like, I don't know. It's scary out there is what I guess I'm trying to be transparent about. It's really scary and it can be unsafe. So be careful. But there was an alignment between like being sure in my career, like having the accolades, having the network and the dashboards and the awards, feeling safe, and then just being so fucking over it. Like just being so fed up and so angry that I was like, I am going to not just sit and take this anymore. Like I'm going to stop politely asking for the same respect. For like just it's human decency. I'm like sweating immediately, just so riled up immediately. But here's what I maybe didn't figure out at first when I kind of started testing this voice was that I don't think it is as valuable to call people out. Like there's a time and a place to call people out, right? When they are blatantly sexist, blatantly racist, blatantly homophobic, like hard stop, this is inappropriate. I think so much of what we see, though, is it speaks to that study that like men think they're doing a good job and they are not. They're not. So instead of being like, you're doing a shitty job, being like, yo, Bob, thanks for trying. Here's 3 ways that you can do better and actually do the things that we want instead of the things that you think we want because you've never actually asked a woman what matters. So I've really tried to take the approach of calling people in instead of calling people out, and where appropriate, like being funny and witty about it, because that is more approachable and accessible. And I do genuinely believe that most men want to be allies. And I think that's what we saw in that data from Harvard Business Review, right? Like they want to be allies. They are self-defining as allies.
Yeah.
They just don't know how to do it right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the problem, right? It's like, it's not our jobs to teach them to be an ally, but also we don't want to sit here and put up with bullshit and say nothing at all at the same time as well. And I've had many situations. Actually, the reason why this whole podcast and our meetup started and our friendship even started is because Ashley and I randomly got connected in the online community, and we both shared very personal stories of, dealing with something that was completely unfair at the hands of a man in the sales industry. And we felt like we couldn't turn to our male counterparts and ask for help or tell them what was going on. So we turned to a complete stranger on the internet that worked at a completely different company to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the second call Ashley and I ever had, Ashley, not to put you on the spot here, but Ashley was sobbing, crying over something that she was experiencing. And I was like, this is not the first time that I've, had a friend go through a situation like this. And I can think of countless times where I've had managers that were men that were amazing managers and great people, and they watched something happen to me and they thought they handled it well, but they don't really do anything about it. And so I sit here wondering, like, how, it isn't our job, but I'm wondering, like, how can we tell men to be better allies or really teach them what allyship really is?
I mean, I'm not an expert on this. I'm out here doing my level best by just like saying the quiet things out loud and not letting men take a pass with good enough. And I think maybe a helpful distinction is between what being an ally and what being an advocate is. And I think a lot of men say the word ally, but they picture advocate being an action, right? They are actually doing something. If you call yourself an ally, and this just isn't an ally for women, like this is an ally for any group that is traditionally underrepresented, that just means that you think that they should have the same rights as you. Like that's not groundbreaking. We're like, oh, we're allies. Like, oh, cool. You think that I should have the same human rights you do? Wow. You're amazing. So I think just helping folks understand that there's such a big difference between allyship, which is, in my opinion, just not enough, and advocacy, which is saying and doing the things that change the narrative and that change the world that we've all existed in, that puts us in positions where you are calling a relative stranger sobbing because you don't feel safe communicating with anybody in your male-dominated team and organization about the thing that just happened to you.
Yep. I'm really glad Katrina didn't run away screaming because
I would never.
Ugly crying.
You know what?
I don't think people understand how common it is. Like I have probably 1 to 2 calls a week every single week with a woman that reached out to me because they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't know who else to go to, and they need somebody to tell them that they're not alone. And
that's what we hope. Not to cut you off, sorry, but
no,
that's our hope for this podcast, is that someone that maybe might be the only woman on their team can listen to this and hopefully doesn't feel so alone, because we're all experiencing the same thing. And by voicing our experiences and sharing our opinions, I hope it helps someone else.
That's right. You're not alone, and you don't deserve to be treated that way. And we will force this industry to transform into something that is more inclusive and more respected.
I love that, and I stand by every word you just said.
So do I.
Now we're running out of time, so sadly we will have to wrap it up. But we always wrap up each episode with, as I said, a rapid round of revenue would you rather questions. Some of them may be personalized to you or just a little quirky and out there. You don't need to explain your answers if you don't want to, but you're also more than welcome to. But are you ready for your would you rather questions?
Okay, let's do it. I'm already like sweating and riled up from that conversation.
It's allowed.
It is hot. And I live in a high-rise building on the 25th floor. It's toasty. It's toasty in here. I'm wearing shorts. Nobody can see it, but I'm in like a golf shirt and shorts. Real professional vibes over here. Anyways, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. Question number 1. Would you rather have to give up LinkedIn or give up TikTok for your sales content?
TikTok.
Would you rather sell 100 small deals to hit quota or 2 big deals to hit quota?
2 big deals.
Would you rather have the ability to effortlessly navigate the good old boys club, but constantly face criticism for being too aggressive, or be known for your collaborative and empathetic approach, but struggle to break into leadership roles?
Pass.
Hey, it's hard questions, hard hitting, hard answers.
Well, you know what? I did one for my entire career, and it led me to burnout 3 separate times. Like many episodes of crying in the bathroom, that weird cry where you like can't really breathe, so you're just kind of like, so it didn't go well, or maybe it did because now I run my own company and I get to work for whoever I want. And hard to say on that one.
It was a hard one. It wasn't really a fair question.
There's no right answer there. No right or wrong
answer.
That one
is too real, Katrina. It's too real.
I know. That was a
I don't want to like shame people that are like in the thick of that right now. Cause like, boy, sometimes it feels like there is no other path forward. So like wherever you're at, that's the yes for you for right now until there's something else.
No, this is the one and only time we'll accept no answer.
Okay.
That was kind of a mean one. So, all right. Next question. Would you rather have a funny meme randomly pop up during your sales demo calls and you never know what it's going to be or what it's going to be? Or every time you close a deal, the Macarena plays loudly no matter where you are?
Oh my God, both. I want all of those vibes in my life. Yes. That sounds so fun. I love that energy. I'm going with the meme on that one.
Love it.
Can it just be the dog sitting in fire that has a sign that says everything's fine here? And that just like pops
favorite meme. Yes. We'll accept that. It can be.
Okay.
Last question. Would you rather have to explain allyship to every new person you meet over the next year? Or would you rather make 1,000 cold calls and somehow have to make a reference to Bam Bam by Sister Nancy in each of your calls?
I would explain allyship to every single person. That could make a difference, I think.
That's true.
It would. That would make a difference.
I think you'd get the pitch down very quickly if you had to explain it to every new person you meet over a year. So
yes,
a lot of practice.
That would, yes. I'll go with the first option there.
Love it. Well, that's it for the Would You Rather questions. And Leslie, thank you so much for being here. You are so much fun to chat with, and you're just an amazing role model, I think, for anyone in the sales industry, but specifically women in revenue. So we really appreciate you being here.
Yes.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you both.
Yes. And just to wrap it up really quick for anybody that's listening, the podcast is here to elevate the voices of women. So please go find Leslie on LinkedIn and also on TikTok, username Sales Tips Talk, for incredible content that's also hilarious. And if you'd like to listen to Leslie's song, Bomb Bomb by Sister Nancy, as well as the walk-up songs of our other guests, you can find our playlist on Spotify by searching for Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist.
Awesome.
Thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist. This show is powered by Comsor, the go-to-network company. Comsor is the complete suite of tools for teams looking to grow, activate, and engage their networks. If you enjoyed the learnings and banter in this episode, there's more where this came from. Follow Ashley and Katrina's Infinite Revenue Playlist wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. See you next time.